just to be relatable here. Yesterday, I defrosted a big hunk of meat. I put it in the crock pot. I thought about it ahead of time. It's cooking in there, right?
It was smelling so good.
Smelled so good. And then at the end of the day, the kids are like, oh, we're gonna go meet our friends. It's wing night. We're doing blah, 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 blah. And I don't want to say I freaked out, but
you lost
I was
a little bit.
Definitely like, you will eat this dinner that I made for you. I said, I do not care if you're going to wing night. I don't care what you're doing. I took the time to make this. You will sit down and eat this.
And we forced their friend who was over too.
And their friend was over and she wasn't eating. I said to her, I was like, you will eat this dinner. I'm going to hold you hostage.
Yes.
I was half joking, half kidding.
Yes.
But I was like, I won't hold you hostage until you eat this food. So that also makes doing family dinners frustrating because I could imagine some moms being like, you know what? I made this nice dinner and nobody ate it. It wasn't appreciated. Forget it. I'm not going to try anymore. And I have really resisted that, and I do keep trying.
Welcome to the neighborhood. Welcome to our podcast. And I am very excited about this simple but profound topic we're going to talk about today.
One of the things that I was just saying when we did our, we were up in Michigan a few weekends ago. And one of the things I said to the parents there is that Satan tries to help us feel so insignificant and small.
Yeah.
And he tells us that the little things we do don't matter.
Yeah.
And this podcast, the subject for this podcast is coming against that because there's something that you do as a family, that you can do as a family, 20 minutes, right? Average 20 minutes for a family dinner. And that is not insignificant. And it is impactful. And I think we sometimes can believe the lie that it doesn't matter, but it does.
Yeah. And I think that whole concept, right? Most of the stuff we do in our homes seems small, insignificant, and it's the hidden stuff. It's the stuff that most people don't actually see.
Yeah.
And sometimes we wonder if it has any impact on our kids, let alone us. And it's like, sometimes like, why bother?
Yeah, absolutely.
And and we want to kind of unpack to re-encourage you, because you probably always know this on some level, but we want to kind of just go a little deeper into it because it's a great conversation to have with spouses to really talk about the importance of this.
And we can always do better.
That's right.
We can always do better on whatever you're doing with your family dinner right now. We can always improve.
And I was shocked when you said the average was 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You asked, how long do you think and I'm like, well, maybe the average is maybe 30 minutes, but then I'm like, well, average, maybe not. Yeah. I don't know. But 20 minutes is the average for family dinner. So if you're in that space, welcome. This is a good thing. This is a good place to be. And one of the things I thought about too, as we talk about, you mentioned the whole plan to undermine or dismiss, and we need to double down on it. We need to reinforce it. We need to be able to even tell each other, bring it out at the light. Like, this is actually important. So if the two of you are on different pages, it's good that you kind of invest in it more deeply.
And I just want to share this quick quote that I found from Bishop Olmstead, because to kind of go with what I was saying about Satan's lie to us.
He's such a great bishop.
He wrote in Complete My Joy, he said, "This is one of the reasons Satan is committed to filling up our lives with other things to do. The more busy we make ourselves in giving in to this temptation, the more difficult it will be to sit down to eat as a family. I urge you to resist this. Families need to disconnect from the world's pace, be present to one another, and break bread together." See,
bam.
I just feel like that's such a great insight to, this little thing, Satan wants to just fill our lives up and just kind of like get us distracted from bringing our family together for this amount of time during the day. And I resist that.
Yeah.
Resist that temptation.
And God used 5 smooth stones to take down a giant. He looked one young girl's yes, that really changed the world. It's the small things that actually matter in God's economy. And when we're talking about the most important entity on earth, human life, right?
Yeah.
It's the small things that really make the big difference. Okay.
All right, well,
before we get into today's topic, right? We are about halfway into our fall ministry survey. And we're getting, you've heard us talk about this before, but really we
are approaching 400 people.
Yes.
And I just have this in my mind. We got to get over 500.
Okay.
We just really want to get over 500. That's what we've had in the past. We've had as many as 700, but we're getting there, guys. Keep going,
yes.
keep doing the survey.
and we are both encouraged by what we read, but it also is fundamentally being wrapped into our planning and our discernment of where do we focus. And, should we be doing a growing up weekend? Let us know in the survey. This is what we're doing. We're using this survey to base decisions on what's the next level of courses that we should offer.
Should we write a book on the family rule of life? What are your biggest pain points?
Should we do something for married couples? Do we do more retreats? What kind of topics? What kind of speakers? What kind of guests? What should we be doing in the future?
How can we serve you?
Yeah.
Help us help you.
That's right.
Help us help you, right?
And so anyway, so we really appreciate those who've taken the time. And for those who haven't, if you could just take 10, 15 minutes, it would really be a great investment in us. But it also is, when you share, it helps so many other families. Because not everybody can do this, but when you do that, it really helps other families in a substantial way really receive the resources that they need.
And also, as we approach the end of the year, we are also getting into our yearly appeal.
Yes.
Because as many of you may know, or maybe you don't know, we are a nonprofit. We are entirely funded by the generosity of our donors. So the people who listen, the people who use our courses, who go to our website, all of that, we really count on everybody contributing what they can to help make this possible.
Yes.
To help us to hire people, that enables us to develop more resources, all of that. So if there's any kind of amount of donation that you can make, we'd really appreciate it. We'll be sending out emails, and actually to our members, we have our monthly donors who are people who are already monthly donors. We have a little special thank you coming because they've been donating and they donate regularly.
Right.
So, but anyway, if you have been blessed by our ministry, just consider donating for the end of the year.
And we'll talk more about that probably in the near future too, about our needs going forward. But we really appreciate it. And we also have a great date night coming up in November, right? So this is, I think, being released in the beginning of November, right? So, but on November 21st, Dr. Greg Bottaro from Catholic Psych is going to be talking about parenting. He's going to help us unpack how do we be more present, how do we be more mindful, how do we invest in our parenting. This is going to be a great date night, one for husbands and wives, for couples to gather together. But it's going to be a great resource. It's going to be a great time. And if you join us at the live date night, then we'll have some time for you to ask some questions or react to it and kind of be engaged in the conversation. This is an important topic, and has some great insights.
And he's also offering a great follow-up for anybody who comes to the date night. You'll get a link to a virtual retreat so you can continue to put into practice the things we'll be talking about with Dr. Greg. And he's just a great Catholic psychologist. So needed. His work is so very needed in the church today. So come to our date night.
Yes.
We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to send, if you register, we're going to send you some recipes for some cocktails and mocktails and appetizers. And we just really want to make it a fun night. So join us November 21st.
Yep. Sign up at messyfamilyproject.org. Okay. All right. So today's topic, you really spearheaded this. So what was the deal? What was the impetus?
So one of the things I was thinking about, first of all, our family dinners have really changed over the years.
Yeah.
Because if you think about like the life cycle of a family, right? We started out with just Mike and I. That was easy. That was the easy time. Then we have Katie, Patrick, Maura in the first 4 years, had 3 kids. All of a sudden, things became a little bit more chaotic, right? Then we have more kids. The kids are getting older. We had to get a new table, right? Yeah. Our table's getting bigger and bigger. Now we have a really, really big table.
Yep.
But then, and it kind of reached a crescendo, right? When we had Katie at home when she was 17 and then Claire was already born. But then Katie went off to college, Pat went off to college, and now it's going down.
Yeah.
And now we just have 3 teenagers at home, and our family looks different again, because now, we were eating a little bit later because people have different schedules and things like that. But my point is that it's really hard.
It's hard at any of those seasons.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to be consistent throughout all of these years. And as I talk with moms, and as we are, like I mentioned, traveling around, like when we were up in Michigan, getting questions about things like, how do you make time for family dinners? How do you make time for this? I feel like it is important to acknowledge that it is not an easy thing. And that planning for meals. I've said this before. One of my favorite memes is this woman sitting at a table.
Show this up on the screen.
So it's a woman sitting at a table with their head in her hand saying, why do they want dinner every night? It's like, yes, that's how I feel sometimes. Every night they want dinner. And so just getting the dinner on the table and planning that out, that can be really hard for moms. And then it's also just getting, no matter how old your kids are, just getting everybody to the table. Yes. Like for the older kids, it's dealing with the schedules, but with the younger kids, it's just like getting them all sit down. Like, just be still. Just stay.
And I remember there were many times where it was just like the frustration of like getting them to sit down. But then when they sit down, are they spilling this? Are they fighting with each other? Right. Are they're moving stuff around? Are they, when you make a beautiful meal, are they just complaining about it?
Yeah,
are they, adding insult to injury or what, or they're not eating their food and but
I just want to tell everybody just yesterday, just to be relatable here. Yesterday, I defrosted a big hunk of meat. I put it in the crock pot. I thought about it ahead of time. It's cooking in there, right?
It was smelling so good.
Smelled so good. And then at the end of the day, the kids are like, oh, we're going to go meet our friends. This wing night. We're doing blah, 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 blah. And I don't want to say I freaked out, but
you lost a little bit.
Definitely like, you will eat this dinner that I made for you. I said, I do not care if you're going to wing night. I don't care what you're doing. I took the time to make this. You will sit down and eat this.
And we forced their friend who was over too.
And their friend was over and she wasn't eating. And I said to her, I was like, you will eat this dinner. I'm going to hold you hostage. Yes. I was half joking, half kidding.
Yes.
But I was like, I will hold you hostage until you eat this food. So that also makes doing family dinners frustrating, because I could imagine some moms being like, you know what? I made this nice dinner and nobody ate it. It wasn't appreciated. Forget it. I'm not going to try anymore. And I have really resisted that, and I do keep trying, because now I've been making family dinners for 30 years and I'm still doing it. You still try, but not only try, you succeed.
There is no try. You're only do it.
We did eat the dinner.
We did it. But it was worth it.
Yeah,
but again,
it is.
Yeah, your point is that we get it, right?
That's my point,
get it.
I totally understand.
It's hard making the time. And then also, you kind of mentioned this in passing, but there are times when kids, whether it be activities or things, pushed our schedules around. Like, I don't think we ever really had an early dinner in our lives. Like, that was never really a thing.
Because you never came home early.
I never came home from work ever. But the other part of this is that there's always moving schedules. There's things that happen. And sometimes when we even have the smaller kids, sometimes it crosses our mind like, is it worth it? Do we all just have, we're at different schedules. Oh, they've got to do this homework. They've got to do that. Is it worth it?
Well, the other thing, I think, the other problem I've heard from parents, and that we've experienced ourselves even, is the behavior issues. Getting kids to sit down, they're arguing at the table, or they're not eating their food, or they're like dropping food on the floor, or making a mess. And then there's food that is like wasted, because they're not eating what it's put down in front of them.
Did your family grow up with saying things like, there are starving children in Africa or China?
I do vaguely remember my parents saying that.
Yeah.
I will be honest with you.
I don't think we've ever actually said that.
I don't think so.
I don't know if it was really effective, but I remember almost all of my friends had that. It was like, was there a script handed out to parents back in the 80s or something?
I think so. Well, I remember doing like the rice bowl and like having like, okay, here's what people who really poor eat. And it had pictures of like starving people on the outside, and that my mom would put that like in the middle of the table.
Did that help you want to eat? Watching starving people?
Honestly, I do remember that going through my head as a kid. I don't know, but maybe I don't know. I don't know. But my point is that I'm also very sympathetic to parents who are frustrated with their family dinners because they feel like this is supposed to be a nice time of connection. This is supposed to be a time when we're like sitting down and like everybody's talking and sharing. And that is still the goal. But I understand how it could be frustrating if that doesn't happen.
Well, because if you have this ideal, this expectation
exactly.
that it's going to be all like this, hey, this is this Martha Stewart, or maybe she went to jail, right? So I don't know who the other image is, right? But
Gaines,
Chip and Joanna Gaines,
yeah, Chip and
right?
Joanna
Like, or
Gaines,
you have everything perfectly laid out, and then
Yeah.
all your kids show up, and they're throwing this, they're moving that, and it's just all falls apart. If you have this ideal, and you're frustrated because you set that expectation here,
Right.
and then you have the reality hits, and you're like,
right.
why bother? And you talked about it, like kind of the ungratitude or all those things that kind of roll into it. They are all reasons that people are like, is it worth it? Is it worth all the investment to make a dinner?
I think what parents need to remember is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Readjust your expectations, maybe?
Readjust your expectations. And we're going to talk about that, and we're going to give you some tips. So all of those things that we just talked about, we want to give you, we do have some wisdom to give you.
We've weathered the storms.
We've weathered the storm.
Dinners.
We have done this. And we have some tips to give you, but that's the
we
first
aren't
thing
professionals, but you do want to do this at home. Like this is what we need to do.
Is that I think having those correct expectations is very important. And I think that is an ideal, and that's an ideal thing to do. But we also want to give you, because we want to give you that encouragement to keep trying, because this is the principle. Much of parenting, successful parents make small investments over time.
Right.
And family dinners, 20 minutes that can change your kid's life, right? 20 minutes, it's a small investment over years.
That's right.
Years and years and years. And our adult children now, I see how they are raising their kids, and they are making that a priority because that's the way that we raised them.
Yes.
And they have that memory of those family dinners, of us sitting down together. And there's so many things that they learned over that time. And as many of you know, so we have 10 children, but I'm the second oldest of 10 children. And so I have so many memories of family dinners growing up, and things that my dad, like there are certain things that my dad said that are like emblazoned in my mind from family dinners.
Yeah. Because family dinner, and we always want to make sure it's clear in our minds. We want to give you some very clear ideas of why it's so important.
Right, exactly.
To carve out time for this, because it matters. It really, really matters. And we want to just make sure that for both husband and wife, you think about this and you even process it in your own experience, because, what your experience was growing up influences your perspective on how you approach it now, or even your experience to date in your own family.
Yes.
So use kind of some of these ideas. One, your family dinner is a unique space. It's a unique opportunity for you as a mom and a dad to model, to show, to exhibit, to invite your whole family, yourselves included, into a place where there is learning. I remember
it's identity and belonging.
It is.
That's what you're doing.
It comes down to fundamental needs of the human person and our fundamental responsibility as parents.
Yes.
It really is this, give us this day our daily bread. This is the daily bread of being a mom and a dad. Yeah. And it's so beautiful that we have this chance. Now, you as a couple need to recognize that this is so important for your kids, but it's a connection between all of you as a family.
Yes.
Again, we talked about this belonging, right? But it even if it's imperfect, again, forget that idea of the perfect. We want the imperfect, messy, but good and substantial encounter. We had that quote from Bishop Olmstead before, and it's about taking the pause in the busyness, the distracted, put your phones down, turn the TV off, and sit and be humans in the first society that your kids will ever know. The culture that really is breathing life into their identity and belonging for your kids.
So I just want to mention real quick. So Mike had in what you just said of that family dinners are a way for us to begin constructing that identity and belonging for our family.
Yes.
But why? The reason they do that is because a family dinner is a routine and it's a ritual. It's both things. So when we say routine, I feel like routine is a word that responds to the need for human formation. Routine, something that you do over and over again, it's expected. And that's really good for kids. We've talked about routines. Predictability for young children is so essential because it's one less thing that they have to worry about. Their worlds are unpredictable, but when they have something steady, I always know that at 5 o'clock, I get to watch a show, and then right after that, we sit down for dinner, and this is what happens at dinner time, and then after dinner, this happens.
Right.
That is a great stability in the life of the human person.
It's a psychological grounding of the human person.
Exactly. It's a psychological grounding. Then the spiritual formation is the ritual.
Yeah.
Because family dinner is also a ritual. What makes it a ritual? Because a ritual is something that builds connection and builds identity, like you were saying before, that identity, belonging. So the ritual aspect of family dinners give your child that identity of, I am a Hernan, I am a Doman, I am whatever your family name is, this is who I am. And it's that belonging where I have a connection. Even if I spend most of the dinner fighting with my brothers and sisters, kicking them under the table, it's still a belonging. It's still, and that's why family dinners are both a routine and it's a ritual because it's responding to that need for human formation and the spiritual formation.
And I think that's important because I was going to get to this in a moment, but like that a family dinner is body and soul. Right?
Yes,
meaning that we are a body soul composite, and a dinner gives us a physical representation of what we need as humans. We need physical sustenance, right? And you can't separate body and soul. Like we're one. It's not, like that. But the beauty of dinner, a family dinner where it's regular, is that you're combining something that we physically, materially need, as well as something that we humanly soul need, right? And again, I'm saying them separate as if they are, but they're one, right? Because we are one,
right?
And it's like even if you just think about something as simple as, you've mentioned this before, that like if we're hangry, like if we're physically and emotionally drawn out.
Yes.
Well, we're more likely to snap at someone. We're more likely to be uncharitable. We're more likely to be impatient. Well, what we're doing at dinner is we're physically feeding them, giving them something really healthy because they may have had a bunch of junk earlier in the day, possibly, right? But you're giving them something that's of substance, is real. But you're also giving them something emotionally, relationally, personally, spiritually real as well. So you're serving more. Like this isn't a fast food joint where we're just filling up and just checking a box and taking in or taking a vitamin that's like our nutritional supplement. This is about the body and the soul. It's about the physical and the spiritual realities that we're providing.
And it's something that's really common, I think, as well. In other words, every person, no matter what your profession is, no matter what your economic state is, no matter how many children you have, it's a common thing. It's something that can unite.
It connects us all.
It connects us with other families who are doing that, and it's not something that's just like a theory, but it is something that is really present because we all have to eat. We all have to eat. And so it's a very it's something that everybody can do.
And we talked about this in the podcast about why kids are anxious, right? About that they're caught up in the world outside of them. And for mom and dad, sometimes we can get caught up in the news, in the media, in the big macro issues that are out there. And oftentimes, even the drama, whether it be drama at school for our kids or drama in other relationships or the media or political, whatever it might be for all of us, family dinner brings us into, brings that locus down, brings it all in focus and says, here's where we are. We want to be physically present, emotionally, spiritually present here at this time. Right. And it pauses the rest of the noise and the chaos and the distractions. And again, this is good for us as well as our kids to be able to have that kind of, again, we talked about psychological grounding, but it really is spiritually, psychologically, physically grounding for us to take those pauses. And again, if you think of, I kind of mentioned before the idea that in our, when we go to Mass, we go to the supper of the Lord. We go to the Last Supper. We go, and that they're in our home. This is sort of the altar of the domestic church.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely,
we're around this table.
Right. That's right.
We share a meal and we share life together. And there's something so fundamental about it, primordial almost, right? Because if you look at, Jesus didn't do that by accident. He didn't just choose a meal. And it wasn't just he was celebrating presenting the Passover meal and becoming the Passover meal. But it's like, but in our homes, rituals are always tied to food because they connect us both with the spiritual and the natural. And it's this beautiful play between the human and the divine in our own home, not this theory, but then our kids get an understanding of, again, repeating ourselves, but that sense of identity and belonging that happens there is the building blocks for them to understand how they fit in this world, how they fit into the church, how their individual lives can just say, okay, this is where it all begins. This is where community and life is oriented.
So what we're going to do is we're going to drill down a little bit and kind of break out why family dinners are good for kids.
Right.
Because, that 20 minutes to change a child's life, right? And it's actually really interesting because there are so many studies now.
Yeah,
like the secular world is really clued into this at this point.
Yes.
We looked for studies about family dinners and there's like a million, because even secular, people are recognizing, hey, wait a minute.
There's a difference
a difference when families gather, which I think is really interesting because to me, it's a physical thing, but it's like a spiritual thing, like we were saying. And I don't have this listed here, but I do want to mention as a mother who takes responsibility for the physical health of my children. I think the first thing, the most basic, important reason that family dinners are important are to feed my children nutritious food.
Amen.
I said this to my 14-year-old son just the other day. I was like, the reason I need you to sit down for dinner is because I need to see you eating non-processed, actual good food. I need to see you eating chicken, rice, broccoli, salad,
Right.
And this is where I, throughout the years, have introduced new foods to my kids.
Correct.
Foods that they wouldn't otherwise eat. So Katie, our oldest, never for some reason wanted salad, right? We have salad every night for dinner. That's the way I grew up and that's what we always do. We always have fresh salad. And so we would only just give her a little bit, or she didn't like lettuce for some reason, right? And then after I think she was probably 8 or 9 years old, and she was like asking for it and eating it. And I said, "Oh, you like salad now?" And she said, "Yeah, you gave it to me so many times. I just decided to like it." And it's like, yes, exactly.
Yes.
Do not give up in giving your kids and giving them good, nutritious food, because if they're always eating stuff that has sugar or is processed or is very salty, their palate gets used to that. And then they actually won't be able in their life as an adult, to have that full range of tastes and really enjoy what God has given us.
Well,
so it's really important for me as a mother to provide a nutritious meal for my kids, at least at dinner time.
Yeah, well, no, but that nutrition, right? They're going through so many growths, and they need.
Yes.
Like I've just come to realize how important some of the simple building blocks of healthy living and how that affects everything. Whether that's again, which we're not talking about today, but like a good night's sleep, or having downtime, all these things, having some leisure, right? But meals, good food. It obviously that they're, again, and I'm not saying our kids are binging on processed food the entire day until dinner, but we don't know.
But they would. They would though.
If they could, they would.
Yeah,
and we don't buy like sugar cereals, and we don't buy all the other things.
Yes, but Jack comes back from football and is eating like chicken nuggets. You know what I mean? Like he's good to do that because he's starving and he wants something quick.
That's right.
And it's like, okay, that's all right. but I also need to.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Have,
and so it's important. So
Yeah.
it's just good for their physical growth as well as for their kind of peace of mind and good sleep and all that. You need that. And it's really, really, really important.
Right.
All right.
So it's important. And studies do show that there's lower levels of obesity and healthier kids when parents sit down to eat dinners with them.
And so, all right, so academics. All right, so having family dinners actually improves your children's academic performance.
Right.
There are studies that talk about frequent family dinners linking to better grades and cognitive outcomes. Where mealtime, like just think about the conversations you have, right?
Yeah.
You know, again, when not talking about babies per se, but as your kids develop, the conversations that they have, that you talk like an adult. Hopefully you talk like an adult.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
But then because you have more than one child in general, you're now expanding their horizon. You're expanding their vocabulary. You're expanding what the normal discourse is. Because if you send your kids to school, they're around kids their same age all day long. And yes, they have a teacher and the teacher's guiding them, but most of their conversation is peer, right? And at your dinner table, you're elevating it, right? And there's simple little, again, these small investments that play out over time.
And for whatever reason, that helps academics. That help, and I think too, it tells kids that what you do matters.
Yeah.
And so when they're at school, they are more likely to take their schoolwork seriously because they know what they do matters. I also wonder if it helps in academics is because that's also a time where parents will ask, how were things at school? What did you do? What did you learn today? What was the high point? You know,
family dinners are probably correlated directly with engaged parents, aware and somewhat attuned, right? You know, I bet you there's a higher correlation that in general, those who have family dinners are given the opportunity to ask questions, both emotionally as well as academically, you know, for their kids. So they're more engaged and more aware.
Exactly. And that's good. And just knowing that parents are watching and are aware of their kids, of their academic performance, I think encourages kids to be more accountable.
And we're not necessarily saying, you know, you have a sheet that you're checking off all their performances. This isn't a daily performance evaluation of your kid, but it is a natural, casual conversation. They spent their day at school.
Yeah.
Or
doing school.
Or doing school, right.
You know?
Yeah, correct. And so, and that's their vocation. So it's natural for us to just talk about it. And it's part of their life, right?
Okay. Also, better behavior. Studies show that families who have dinner together, that helps children to actually have better mental health, are more emotionally regulated.
Yes.
They have better friendships.
Lower risk.
They are able to actually function more effectively in society. And I think that psychological adjustment, again, has to do with knowing, hey, I count. I am important. Yeah. I'm important to someone. That identity and belonging that we talked about at the beginning as a kind of like almost like a theory or an abstract, that becomes very concrete.
Tangible.
When you see when a child has that identity and belonging, this is how it manifests in their life.
Yeah.
They are actually psychologically more grounded and able to handle stress and anxiety and all of those things because of that identity belonging that you're giving them during that family dinner.
And many social science, we've kind of mentioned this before, often talk about this generation having the new Great Depression, right? And it's a mental health crisis out there. And there's, again, part of the reason they're doing these studies are coming is that they have concern, and they have pointed directly to family dinners as decreasing the rate of depression, safeguarding our kids against mental health issues as a general rule. And when we see, again, these simple investments, would you take 20 minutes a day if you knew that it was going to help your kids stave off depression in the future? It's not a silver bullet, and there are, you know, all other factors that come into it, but statistically, the science is reporting that this is a great vehicle by which we can reduce the challenges that are coming in our world, that our kids are swimming in this world. So let's make sure that we're building them up and strengthening them.
Okay, so then, and this kind of like goes along, kids who have family dinners are better socialized They're better socialized. They're better able to relate with people
Yes.
of different ages. They are more confident. One of the things that I remember thinking with in our family in the Domans, and I see this with my own children as well, but in my family of origin, all of us are very are not intimidated at all about getting up in front of people and speaking.
Right.
There's like talks, presentations, but even just like standing up and asking a question in a big room of people. Some people are just like terrified of doing that. No, none of us are. I think it's because literally our family dinners were like talking in front of a group of people.
Yeah. That was a large group of people too.
Yeah, because it's a large group of people, you know? Or even like when we have birthdays and people go around and we honor
it's around
whoever
the
it
dinner
is.
table.
And so it's like, that's a time, but it's like, you're almost like doing a presentation around the dinner table.
It's true.
You
It's
know,
very
it's just
true.
like, okay, you're 7 years old and you're looking around the dinner table at mom and dad, 2 adults, maybe some teenagers, maybe some little kids, and you need to talk for a few minutes and say your thoughts. You know, it's like, there's something to that.
Yeah.
That is, and doing that in a very safe, controlled environment.
That's right.
If you do that over and over and over and over again, that becomes part of who you are. And that gives you that confidence going forward. It changes the way you see yourself and how you present to others.
And that's one of the beauties of family dinner is it creates a virtue bridge, right? Meaning that like you're doing just mini presentations, you're overcoming some fear about just sharing your own heart and mind, your soul, blah, blah, your thoughts. But also like even little moments where we're teaching kids, what side does the fork and the knife go on? Waiting, like we have everyone wait before they eat. They wait until everyone is served. They don't eat when they first got it. We usually serve the youngest to the oldest. And it actually, and just thinking about that right now, that makes the youngest have to wait the longest with food in front of them. And it creates a virtue of patience and a respect for others, right? And those are bridges for other things in their life. Simple, and they're not like, oh, we gave this big lesson and teaching. It was, here is the proper way to do this.
I was just thinking, we had another kid over our house and we were talking about family dinners actually. And she said 2 things that I thought were really interesting about her family's dinners. One is that she said that at their family, you have to ask to be excused. You know, may I be excused when you're finished? And she was like, and she was a teenager when we were having this conversation. She is a teenager. And she said, she was like, I never thought that was odd or, you know, or anything until she went to somebody else's house and like said that or whatever. And then she was like, oh, I guess not everybody does this, you know?
That's
and
right.
but I thought that's such a polite thing. And then she also mentioned how her dad hates hearing people chew. Like it's like his pet peeve, you know? And so they always have quiet music on in the background. And I remember being as a kid, my father saying, stop smacking your lips. Don't smack your lips, you know? And as a kid, I was kind of always like, what exactly does that mean? And then as I got, because I remember hearing it from like really little. And then as I got older, of course, I usually, you know, like chewing with your mouth closed, you know? And like, this is how, and we taught our kids.
Yeah,
we
but those little etiquettes and manners. And,
we've literally said to them, this is how you hold your fork.
Right.
This is how you cut your food. Hold it like a pencil, you know, like I've said that to so many of the kids, hold it like a pencil, you know, and like, here you pinch it, you know, like you pinch, this is how you hold your fork. This is how you cut. You don't have to like cut all your meat. You can cut one piece and then eat it, you know. This is how you pass things. You don't reach across the personal space of the person next to you to get the butter. You say, could you please pass the butter? You know, and again, I remember my father like explaining that to us, you know, how to do it.
Because all that is teaching our kids how to relate to the greater world, right?
Right.
Everything we do at home is training ground for them to be launched off as adults. And this is teaching them how to relate to other people, how to interact in social occasions and situations.
Right.
I mean, you know, working in Washington, D.C. for a number of years, I had to learn some new etiquettes. I went to fancier dinners and different, but I had the baseline.
Right.
And we teach, and having learned that, I teach some of those basics. We teach some of those basics to our kids.
So some of those things are habits too.
Some of those
of
are
like
very
how you
much.
chew your food. That's like a habit.
But it's
that you
getting
should be aware of.
Yeah, but it's getting them to think about others, and then even the conversations we've had, right? You know, whether it be the news of the day, whether it be local, like in their school or in our community, or whether it be like kind of the politics and things that are going on. You know, again, as long as that's not a touchy subject and going to set things off, but it's meant to engage in a conversation.
I disagree with that. Even if it does,
you can disagree.
That is, well, I mean, like even around your family table, that should be a place where controversies are discussed.
I guess I'm thinking more like extended family.
No, we're just talking about your family, your immediate family.
But exactly that point. You're teaching your kids how to have a disagreement.
Right.
And then you, in some ways, as a facilitator of that conversation, should be like, hey, it looks like you may have a differing point. What's your opinion?
Right.
What's your position? What's your thoughts? What's your questions? And you draw out of them things, and ideally, you're hearing stuff that they're interested in. Mm-hmm. You're hearing what they may want to do, and you're building that, integrating that into the conversation.
And you're kind of learning what they know too, because especially as kids become teenagers. And if they're online, they're getting their news from other sources. They're getting their news from friends at school. They're getting their news from teachers. I remember sitting down with our kids, like at dinner time, asking, and they would bring up stuff that they heard at school, they learned at school. And that was our time to give our perspective of those current events, or our perspective, or things that they may not know about that are happening in the world today. Very often, because some kids are really in tune with current events, some are not.
That's right.
Like we've had conversations with this crop of kids who is in our home right now, you know, about events that I think it's important for them to know about that they didn't even know about.
Right.
You know, they should know. To be an educated person, you should know this is happening right now.
Right.
And explaining those things to them. But having those conversations, but even just like watching them relate to each other and saying to the kids things like, hey, it's okay if she thinks differently than you, you know, but that socialization and those conversations are so important. I just remembered something else growing up, is that this is when I remember my dad telling us stories about when he was little. And we would say that. I remember like while we were all eating, sometimes some of the kids would be like, Dad, tell us a story about when you were little, you know? And he would like tell us things. When do you really get a chance to do that with your kids? It's not like a long story. You know, it's like a little 5-minute, okay, well, I remember I learned how to ride horses because we lived on this farm and blah, blah, blah. And this was my dad. I remember him telling us those stories and I could like picture it in my mind. You know? And
so again, why the kind of final reason or one of the reasons that we have here that I'd say is fundamental, and we've kind of mentioned it already, is it's a unique opportunity to show love. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to say you love your children, but it's another to show it. And at dinner, you get a chance to do that. I thought about it this way. 5 love languages. 5 love languages are actually all in place in a family dinner. If you think about, right? So words of affirmation. Yes, that happens in the conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Quality time. We're spending time together. We're stopping everything else. We're putting our phones down. We're not just rushing to consume food, right? Giving gifts, the gifts of food,
definitely,
particularly the mom or whoever's preparing the meal or those who are setting the table. It's an act of service. It's acts of service, right? And then physical touch. We're actually sitting down and maybe, we don't really hold hands when we pray, but it's like your physical practice.
Do, yeah.
I know. Mm-hmm. And my dad always wanted to do that when we prayed and stuff like that.
It's always hard to bless yourself.
I know. I'm like, who? But if you think about it, that family dinner is that occasion once a day as a family. You again create that sense of belonging, but you're able to show love, that you delight in them. Like so many parents say, how do I make time to show delight in my kids, to make sure my kid knows that they are known and seen and loved? Make it a lifelong commitment to family dinners.
That's right.
And your kids will know that because you've made the protected space, the sacred space of your family dinners, where you pause from all the other demands and where you focus in and are present together as one body, as one family together.
And it's an amazing opportunity too to be really intentional with your kids, make sure that maybe during that dinner when they say something, you're affirming them.
Yeah.
You know, like, what was, what did you do at school today? Oh, well, we played on the playground and blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's awesome. Like, what did you play? Oh, you organized that game?
Yes.
Good for you. I bet everybody really appreciated that you did that.
Do we recognize it?
Yeah.
Do we delight in it, and do we communicate that delight in them?
I was having conversation at dinner with one of my daughters, and she mentioned that she saw one of our friends out in public and that she went over and talked to them. And I said, you know what? I bet that made them feel really good to feel welcomed and seen that you went over and talked to them. That's great that you did that. Yeah. Like those kinds of affirmations, I think are so important. Or if your kid says something,
and this can happen outside of this, but this is at least one. It's like one
intentional time. Like when parents ask, "How do I make my kid feel delighted in?" Like when they talk about whatever they did, or they have an idea for something, say, "I love that you did that. That's so cool that you did that." So that's what we're talking about, is having that intentional conversation with our kids.
All right. So here's how we make this happen, right? I love this that you wrote this down. It's about presence, not perfection, right? Yeah. Having a dinner together, having regular. Oh, and I should mention, maybe I said this earlier, but there was one of these studies that talked about addiction. Did I put it in here? I forget. Maybe I didn't.
Go ahead.
But just that family dinners actually reduce addiction, according to Columbia and some of their research, that it reduces addiction to smoking and drinking and marijuana. They say it 5 times less likely. 5 times less likely.
To be honest with you, I really think that addiction is a symptom of a wound, somebody trying to cover up that wound. And when you have a person who has a strong identity and belonging that has been reinforced by their family, they're less likely to want to what's the word? Comfort. Comfort themselves.
Seek escape, right?
Seek escape, through addiction.
And what they said is that the differentiator was 5 meals a week, 5 regular family dinners. It was the number that they saw the statistic move. And so I just proposed that to everybody. I remember when we talked to Father Leo Padalingwag, where we said, is this every night? Do we have to do it every single night? And he says it has to be regular. And again, in this one study, it talked about 5 times a week where they have family dinner. So first thing is make having dinner a priority. Make having regular family dinners a priority, because if it's early, if it's late, it doesn't really matter. If things are pushed back and you have to readjust, whatever, make it happen. Have everything that you can, or do everything you can to carve out and make that a sacred appointment in your family. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe it's having breakfast together. Like our daughter has her husband works late every night. And so their attempt is to, at the time that they can gather, it's not family dinner. It actually has to be family breakfast.
Interesting.
Like that's going to be their time to gather together, but just making sure that you're sitting down together at some time for that. And there's so many great ideas of how to prepare for the meals for that, to make it a priority.
So it's not just a burden on one person, particularly the mom.
Exactly. But there's so many great ideas. Like you can really practical things, which there's a lot of people out there who do this a lot better than us. But you can batch meals. You can make freezer meals. You can do crock pot meals. You can say, okay, I'm going to make a more involved, like I did my roast yesterday, make something more involved one night, and then another night you just do, chicken patty sandwiches, or whatever, or you just do tacos. You find a few meals. Another mother said this in our on our member site. We were meeting for our mom circle, and she said she has a list of 8 meals that she can make really easily that her family really likes. And so when she's thinking about, what should I make tonight? She can just go refer to one of those 8 and just do that. Yeah. And so just having a go-to meals, a go-to list of meals that you're like, okay, I know I always have ground beef and this, and everybody likes it. If I can't think of what to make, that's what I'll do. Yes. And I know it takes me 20 minutes or a half an hour or whatever. So having those kinds of plans ahead of time. The other thing is it's really the ways you can make this a priority is to have meals that the kids can put together, like making sure that if you're prioritizing that, make sure you include them. And actually, we're going to get to that. That's our fourth tip. So I'll leave that for now. Okay. So first of all, make it a priority. Even if you get off and you don't have family dinner for 2 nights, make sure you get back on. Make a commitment to it.
That's right. And second is turn it into a routine, right? Have a certain things, because if it's going to be a priority, you need to make it part of your normal rhythm in your life.
Right.
Although I'll cook every now and then, it is not as regular. I'm not a great cook, but I have a handful of meals that I can do and do really well that contribute to it. But when one of the things that you talked about was having a plan earlier in the day. Sometimes you have that whole earlier you used to do like once a month cooking where you'd batch a whole bunch of things and you'd be ready and you'd have it and be like, okay, I'm going to defrost this and I'm going to be ready to go.
Right.
But you still needed to prepare something, right? And it gets more tricky if both parents are working out of the home, for sure, right? But you would often talk about making a plan by 10 a.m. You knew what was going to happen for dinner.
Right.
And when you're not here, if I'm watching the kids, if I don't have that, there is going to be no dinner. Like the decision is made because I didn't make a decision before lunch. You know what I mean? Because then I couldn't defrost anything. I couldn't pick up anything if needed. And it was just going to be too late.
It's just, if the fact is that if you have it in your mind before lunchtime, oh, this is what I'm going to make for dinner, even if it's something really simple, it just kind of like lessens the stress of having to quickly decide something.
Yes.
So that's when you can either pick up something at the store or have something defrosted, but you have a plan in the morning that will help you later on.
And I know some people, and this has not really been our experience, who even plan out the meals for the week and be like, I'm going to, boom, boom, boom. And we've done that. Like there have been moments where it's like
what do you mean we've done that?
Well, yeah. What do you mean we, man? But like the Taco Tuesdays or, little things where it's like, okay, these are our patterns or life things.
Okay, so that's in regards to the meal planning. But you also need a routine in how you do dinner. Yes. Decide with your spouse, how are we going to call the kids for dinner? Right. When I was a kid, my mom had a bell, literally a dinner bell. She would go outside and ring the bell. For a long time here, we had a bell because we have a big property and the kids would be outside. And so we would ring the bell for dinner. Maybe you have a Google broadcast, right? Maybe you broadcast.
Alert it to the house.
Right, exactly. Maybe if you have a smaller family, it's a little bit easier. There has to be a way of calling everybody for dinner. What is that? And then thinking a part of your routine is, how do you begin your meal? How do you begin? You should, as a Catholic family, of course, begin with grace. What is the grace that you say? My family of origin, my father always started with a song. Like he would sing the same song. It would drive us crazy, but he would sing the same song for like 3 months. I remember for one time it was the song, Hold Me, Lord. This Echo song. He would always sing Hold Me, Lord for like 4 months in a row, or he would always, sing.
I love when we sing together.
He would always have like these standard, and my dad's a great singer too. So he would always start off with a song, and then and that kind of helped gather everybody together. It was part of our routine. And then, we would say our standard grace, and then we would begin. Maybe your family has something else that you do, but it's good to have a definite beginning time for the meal.
Like this is now we have begun.
Exactly.
And then preceded how you serve.
Then food. After that, right. Then you decide how you're going to serve your food.
Right.
What we do is what everybody does something differently, but it's good to have a decision.
Right. Because what you're doing by having all these, you create that routine, which creates proper expectations for everyone.
Exactly.
Right? Because again, when they're younger, if you're changing, it takes time to adjust or onboard the new members of your family or whatever, or if you're making a change, but knowing this is the ritual that we go through. These are the routines that are part of us having dinner. So the how food is brought to the table, who's cooking, what the meal is, how it's prepared, how we pray, then how do we serve?
So what I would always I have like my pet peeve is that once I put the food on the table, I just don't want it to get cold. Maybe because when I was growing up, the food was always cold because it would take a time for everybody to come together. But like once I put the food, we always have the food in the middle of the table. Mike has all the plates stacked up in front of him. And then he and we sit next to each other instead of like mom and dad at different ends of the table.
Right.
And my parents would always sit next to each other, kind of like that sign of unity, if you will. But they would, and we do what I did growing up, which was we would put food on the plates and we start with the youngest. And we still do that now.
Right.
Even if we have guests, we usually serve the little kids, but then our guests first. And then last, Mike and I are served. And this is part of the manners thing is that, and we remind our guests if we have people who come,
right.
We say we actually don't
We just
eat.
wait.
We don't eat until everyone has been served. Right. And then after everybody's served, Mike will go, you may eat.
That's true.
We still do that today.
It is.
You know?
It's true. It's true.
Like, okay, you may eat. You know?
And another kind of expectation that's part of this routine is how much you serve people, right? And how much is expected that they should consume. Like when we serve, Alicia always has something green, a protein, a meat, right? Probably a starch, and then a green vegetable, and usually salad in addition to the vegetable. Sometimes just the salad, sometimes, but knowing that those portions are going out, and it's far easier to start with a smaller portion and add to it than
this is our strategy for getting kids to eat their food.
but once that portion is out, they really ought to eat it. And we used to have the clean plate club, they had there's no dessert, no evening activities if there was a show or anything going on, unless you were a part of the clean plate club.
And I remember with some kids who had a hard time finishing their food, I would say, okay, how old are you? You're 5 years old. Okay, you need to take 5 spoonfuls of
5 more,
whatever it is. Yes, you may be excused when you have 5 spoonfuls of this.
And don't be too rigorous, because I think we've shared in the past where we have forced kids to eat beyond that point where we were just sticking to a rule. And it hasn't ended well for anybody at the dinner table.
Yes.
When that happened. It's only happened, I think, twice, but it's happened twice.
Yes. And, we have had the meal that someone ingested become on the table.
Yes.
But there is something though about, like, I'm not a big fan of eat everything on your plate. Because I just feel like that's maybe a little bit too strict. I do know families that do that, but you do what works for you. But if you give them small portions and then they have to ask for more, that's a way to do that. Or we just kind of, like I said, okay, you're 5, you have to have 5 spoonfuls, and then sitting there and like feeding them. I know some people would be like, well, if you're not going to eat this, we're going to put it in the fridge and then you can have it later. That never worked for us because I would always forget. And then there's food in the, I mean, if people are disciplined enough to do that, more power to you.
That's right.
I just couldn't do it. But at least wanted to have some kind of standard for eating when we're at the dinner table, because again, going back to that routine, they will get used to it, right? They will get used to it. Like this family that we mentioned about how they ended their meal, they would have to ask to be excused. I had to ask to be excused when we were growing up. We didn't do that, like in the Hernans, for whatever reason, but people should know what they're doing when they leave. They should know, they should clear their place,
put
their stuff in the dishwasher. Are they doing chores? Are they going to do schoolwork? What is happening when they get up? That's part of the routine.
And then another part of the routine is that we're listening, we're laughing, we're connecting, right? This is the relationship
the
building,
conversation
right?
at the table.
Yeah, and then how do we direct that? We've always tried, and I think we still strive for the one conversation rule. And I think that's
a really good point. I forgot to put that down.
But just the idea that,
say what you mean.
Yeah. So the idea, and again, it was never perfect when we had 15 people around the dinner table, if there were guests and, all of that. But we want to have one conversation so that everyone can be heard. Again, that identity belonging sense, right? That hey, there's somebody who's sharing something. We're all going to talk about it. Or Alicia or I bring something up and we want their reaction to it. And what we need is that this is a place,
group conversation,
a group conversation as much as possible. Again, when we have grandkids and everybody else, it becomes a little harder to have just one conversation, especially with, and again, if you have lots of little kids, and then some teens, there might be different levels of conversation that are possible, right? So you have to adjust that. But I think that's a good ideal to strive for. But again, if we're listening and paying attention, and I know we should probably do a whole podcast on having better conversations with kids, because for many years I would just ask, "How was school?" "Fine." "What'd you do?" "Nothing." We've got to think of better questions that prompt and bring out better things. And one of the simple things that we've always done is highs and lows. And that's good. And again, that could still get you rote answers. And I've added a nuance of, what am I really proud of today?
Yeah.
What am I looking forward to? Is there something that I look back and wish I had done differently? There's ways to add and deepen that depending on the age and on the conversation that you're having in the home.
And even if a kid says, "Oh, what did you do today?" and they say nothing, I always say, "Well, what was the best part of your day?" Or what was recess. Why? Why was that the best part?
Right.
Because I got to run around. Why? What did you do when you ran around? You know what I mean? Like you can always
to go deeper.
Ask a little bit more to go deeper. And I think it is important for you to think about, what are we going to talk about at dinner tonight? Maybe there are issues of the day, like I said, but maybe there's issues in your family.
Right.
Maybe you notice a lot of backbiting and sarcasm. Maybe you notice a lot of, people not sharing or not being generous. Maybe take some time to talk about that.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't go heavy on teaching though.
Right. Well, what I mean is that you could even talk about stories from your childhood, giving examples, or it's just say, you know what, I was thinking about this today. Yeah. Or I was thinking about this today. Like I was at work and, I asked my coworker for a stapler, and he wouldn't give it to me, and that was really annoying, and it made me start thinking about that. Hey, how are we living this out in our home? What's something that we can do?
Yeah.
But I think that even if you do have it teaching time, dinner, that's the time to do it.
Yeah. As long as you keep it short, right? Keep it short, because you've always been helpful in the background as I start going on. Cutting me off.
But I think it's important to take some time to think about that.
To be intentional about it.
Don't be afraid to use that time to address issues in your family.
Yes.
Because this is the time to do it. It's much easier to do it then than trying to do it on the fly or something. And like I mentioned too, I just wanted to say one thing too, kind of going off of that, is sharing stories and memories from the past. So maybe it's from your own childhood, or maybe it's the anniversary of a death in your family, or something like that. It's good to talk about those kinds of things.
Yeah, because again, when you share those memories, you're connecting them. And then even stories about growing up, like you talked about earlier, but it could also be things that are going on in your extended family. Whether it be health things with a cousin or an aunt or an uncle, or whether it be something beautiful like a wedding that's coming up. Again, it keeps our kids tethered to us and to our family, right? And something that we've done in the past is dinner games. And there's cards that we bought at one point, or somebody gave us, and sometimes there were questions that were asked. Sometimes there was games like, look what's missing from the table. There are ways to make, extend the time around your dinner table. The average,
even if it's once a week,
the average is 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you really should be at least to 20 minutes. But then there are times where maybe once a week where you really extend that, where you really intentionally are let's go a little deeper with prolonging our time together.
We could pretty easily, all right, I'm just going to promise this to people on the fly here. Right. We could probably pretty easily make up a sheet of dinner games and just put that, link to that somewhere.
Well,
on
let
our
us
site.
know if you want it, because you know what? I don't want to create it if nobody's interested.
That's true. So
if people email us.
Because we definitely have things that we have written down that of dinner games that we would play around the dinner table.
We are over an hour conversation. Do you want to keep finish
I think
up?
I think it's important.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay, so last thing. So we have our four things. So make family dinner priority, have a routine, use your time to listen, laugh, and connect. And last, really include the kids in doing all of this.
True.
Okay, so I learned how to cook because my mom would be on the road and she would call home and she'd be like, take the chicken out of the freezer and this is how you defrost it and then put this seasoning on it and then put it in the oven at this, this temperature, whatever. This is how you make rice. And like she would call home and give us instructions on how to do those things. The other night we had our 13-year-old make an entire taco bar.
Was fabulous.
And she made homemade salsa, homemade guacamole. She browns the meat. She seasoned it. She did everything. And she had never done any of that before. But she figured it out.
Excellent.
She just asked our Google, how do I give me a recipe for this? It's really, and it's so good. And it was excellent. But these are also ways to kind of make mom's life easier, because if you can't make dinner 5 nights a week, well, have one night when one of the kids making dinner. Have dad take one night to make a dinner.
Yes.
Then maybe you do a simple dinner one night. Like simple meaning
leftovers or something too.
Exactly.
Right?
And then maybe it's only 2 nights that you're making dinner. So have that in your mind and make sure that you're including the children in doing all of that.
Because it also is teaching them. We talked about identity and belonging quite a bit, but this also gives them a sense of purpose, that they're giving back. They're learning how to love and serve their family. So it helps mom out or whoever's normally preparing meals. But it also is teaching them a skill and giving them a sense of purpose of how they contribute to the family as a whole.
Most of the chores in our home revolved around dinner time.
Yeah.
So we would have kids who were setting the table, who were pouring the water, all of that.
Cleaning
and then
up.
afterwards, you have kids who are clearing the table, loading up the dishwasher, putting away the food, sweeping the floor, washing the dishes. So you can have one person do all of that. You can split it up between there's a million different ways to do chore charts. But I think having whoever made the dinner should not be cleaning up.
That's
so
right.
If mom made dinner, like I haven't cleaned up the kitchen after dinner in a very, very long time, because I'm always making the dinner.
That's right.
And that's okay. But I think that it's really good to have the children learn.
It is.
And for
essential.
them to learn too, by the way, to say thank you to mom and dad, to say thank you at dinner time, for them to be grateful for whoever made the meal.
And dad ought to help lead and set the stage for that, right?
Right.
And it ought to come from all of them eventually as part of your just family culture, but dad ought to lead again, or if dad made the meal, then mom lead, whatever. But leading our kids, showing, modeling, and then encouraging that kind of gratitude is important.
And I think including the kids in the preparation and cleanup is a way of building that community, is that it's not just mom and dads are the slaves of the home. No, this is a community we all contribute. And that's another way to give those kids that identity and belonging.
Okay, so hopefully we've given you substance about how these 20 minutes around the dinner table are possibly the most important time in your day. And it provides a unique opportunity for parents to embrace your sacred calling, to do what you were meant to do.
Yeah.
And we've given you a lot. And if you want to check the show notes, we'll have both links to the date night with Dr. Greg Bottaro, as well as taking the survey. And we'll have some key takeaways and conversation listed there as well.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and pray.
Okay.
In the name of the Father and the Son of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And Lord, we just thank you for all of the families listening. We ask you to bless them as they gather their families to break bread together. Give them that conviction that they need to know that what they're doing is truly important, and how important it is in the lives of their children. Just affirm them, Lord. Affirm each one of them so they can know that what they are doing is really shaping the lives and the souls of their children and of their family. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Amen. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.
Family, we're taking a chance.